So I'll just reiterate for those that just walked in. The packet in front of you is how to present the buyer-broker agreement in case you missed that class on Wednesday. So I want you all to have that and know what it looks like and kind of have my version of what I say to get those things signed. Today, we're going to be working through an actual buyer presentation. Like, what does it look like to sit down in front of people that you may or may not know and identify why they're buying, why they're moving, and why that's important to them? Cool? Is everyone in the right class? So Liz is, Reese is like, well, that's not what I really wanted to learn. So Liz's question was, why do I do the MLS, like the actual setup of the search after I have the buyer-broker agreement signed? And did everyone catch the answer?
Yeah, you don't want to give away the score.
It's a lot of time to go searching. That's like 30 minutes of my presentation. So
Yes.
why would I spend my time if they're like, oh, we're still looking for agents?
Cool. Yeah. Oh, hey, thanks. Hey, thanks for just going through that 30 minutes, identifying every property on the market that fits what I'm looking for. And also, my sister is a real estate agent. So, thanks. Okay. So, by this point, I've set the appointment, right? I know when they're coming into the office. I put the appointment in my calendar. I've sent them an email confirmation with the address and a map to our office. I have booked a conference room with the front desk. I've confirmed the appointment with the client 24 hours in advance. And I have all of my documents and my buyer presentation ready. Everyone tracking? Who here has a buyer presentation that they take with them? Who does not? Like the rest of you, what is it, like a hybrid, or are you asleep? Like maybe one day. So the buyer presentation, the actual booklet, or like whatever value add you're bringing with you, that's important simply because you can do it two different ways. You can send it ahead of time as a value add, like here's what we're going to be going over tomorrow in our presentation. Or you can actually, what I do, and you may or may not want to do this, is if they ask me a question that I know the answers in the book, we'll flip through it to that page and I'll show it to them. But more often than not, just going over this and building the rapport with them and then getting the buyer-broker agreement signed, I can leave that as a like, here's a little souvenir in case you can't sleep at night and want to like read all the boring accolades about my team. Right? So that's your brag sheet, but this consultation is 100% about the client and less about you. So I would encourage you to have anything that you want them to know about you in your buyer presentation, the actual piece of collateral you're giving them, so that you can spend the entire consultation talking about them. Does that make sense? So I keep this little cheat sheet and maybe I could pull it up on the screen. But basically what this is, and you can find this, there's a version of it on the Home Hub. It's not this one because this is branded to my business, but it's basically a note-taking cheat sheet for me to cue me along for the various parts of my buyer presentation that are important enough that I don't want to skim over them, right? And then I'm also taking notes so that later I can put this all in my CRM and I can just like scan it and upload it into saved documents under their contact card in Command. So the first thing I want to know when I sit down with them is I want to know what are their full names. How many of you have had a buyer consultation and you've gone all the way through it and then you show them homes and then you get ready to write an offer and you write it how you've been addressing them and find out they have a completely different legal name? It happens, right? So this, even though it's silly, and they're probably going to tell you the name that you call them, I always want to be very clear that, hey, you know, this is going to sound silly, but I got to ask, what is your full legal name that you want on title? And then write that down, because that's important to have. John.
Your cheat sheet, is there a form that you use to fill out all the pertinent data, like their name, when you get there?
This is that. So I'll pass it around so you guys can see it. Don't steal my client information. They already signed a buyer broker agreement. So this is from the last, this is from the last consultation I actually did. So I want to know their full legal names. I want to know their current address. I want to know their phone numbers. I want to know their email addresses. And then I want to know who the primary decision maker is if there's two of them or more, right? Why do I want to know that question? Well, that's a good one. And Risa, that's good, but I'll plus one that it's not just who I'm going to talk to. It's if there's one person that's absolutely the decision maker, I want them at all my showings, right? If we agree in the consultation that one of the partners is the decision maker, but the other one is available to see homes, we're going to have a discussion about, hey, if we can all agree that this person is the ultimate decision maker, I want to know when this person can go and see properties, right? So same example goes for a young couple buying a house and dad is ultimately going to have a say. Cool, dad, I want your 100% commitment that you're going to come to every showing too. Like, I'm just not going to show you homes that the decision maker or someone that's important in your decision-making process isn't there along the whole journey. Make sense? So then after I've identified their basic contact information, who the decision maker is, I want to identify their preferred method of communication. How do they want to be talked to? Liz?
You just straight up ask who's the decision maker.
Yeah. And if they don't know, if they're like, well, we both are, I'm going to ask them a question. Do you want to know the question I ask them? I want to know, do you brush or floss first? Do you brush or floss first? This is totally like off the wall, but it's going to make them think, and you will find out who the decision maker is because one of them will look at the other one every time. Also, there's no right answer to that question, so it doesn't matter their answer. As long as you're flossing, you're good. It doesn't matter whether you do it before or after. But it's a good question, and it gets them thinking, and it gets them thinking hard enough that the person that is not the decision maker will look to the other person and see what they say.
What if they're just laughing inside because not knowing they recognize brushes?
They'll look at each other and they'll laugh. The decision maker will answer you. Yeah. You'll be able to gauge it pretty quickly. Most of the time they have an answer for you. Like most of the time one of them will be like, look, this is their thing. I'm just here for the ride. I mean, that's, how many of you know who the decision maker is in your relationships? If you don't know, you're probably not the decision maker. Does that make sense? So it's all about like, how do we ask the strategic questions that break the ice so that they're like, wait, we're meeting with you to buy real estate and you just asked me if I brush or floss first. Like, what's wrong with you? Like, it's funny. It's funny, right? And it gives me a whole lot of information by asking one question. Okay? So now I'm going to ask them, how do they want to be communicated with? That's a weird question for a lot of people. They're like, what do you mean? I'm like, well, would you prefer that every time I need something from you, I call you? Would you prefer that every time I need something from you, I text you? Or would you prefer that I email you? And then they're going to give you an answer, right? They'll probably tell you in order of importance, like, hey, call me first. If I don't answer, shoot me a text, then email me. Or some people, like Liz, will have like 5,000 unanswered emails in their inbox. Like, don't email her. It'll be lost forever. So but you want to know that, right? Because if your preferred method of communication is email and you're emailing someone that never checks their email, how effective is that communication? Probably not pretty good. Probably not very good. So the converse, like the follow-up to that, once I know what their preferred method of communication is I'm going to tell them how I like to communicate. I'm going to communicate in their style, right? I'm going to honor that because they're my clients and that's important. And I'm going to let them know how I communicate and what my hours of business are. Why do I do that? Right? Or so when I don't answer my phone, they know why. Right? My answer to that is I work real estate 9 to 5, sometimes 9 to 7, but between the hours of 5 and 7, it's going to be hit or miss. What I can promise you is that if you can't get me in the evenings, I will call you back first thing in the morning. That will alleviate 99% of the problems that the general public has with agents, which is I call my agent, they never answer the phone. Like set the expectation up front. Another one that I hear all the time is like, I really want a weekend. Like, how do I get a weekend? Here's how you get your weekend. Hey, Mr. and Mrs. Seller, on Saturdays, I show properties all day. On Sunday, I spend time with my family. I don't answer phone calls on Sunday. Or whatever that is for you. For a long time, I took Mondays off because I would work all weekend. And I was like, hey, on Monday, if you call me, like, I'm probably not gonna answer. I'm probably getting a massage. Right? Yeah, a blank version. Like, please, again, please don't call my clients. Except for Brent, they're his clients too, so he'll know if you call my clients. Yeah, right? I'm like, they're good buyers. I probably should have just printed a blank one, sorry. So now that I know, now that we've discussed communication styles and we've set expectations of what they would like and what I can deliver, now I want to get into what do they know? Is this their first home? Are they buying it to live in it? Are they buying it as an investment? Are they buying it as a starter home? Like, what's their ultimate goal? What are we looking at, right? So now I know kind of what they're looking at, and then I want to know how far into the process are they? Have they met with a lender? Are they pre-approved? How much money do they have to put down? If they are pre-approved, do they know what the payment looks like at their max, or do we need to have a discussion around what they're comfortable with and what price range we should be looking in? There's a difference, and explaining that will go a long way. If you are going out and looking at properties with clients that they can't afford the monthly payment, what's the likelihood of you getting a referral from those clients? Yeah. So the understanding of, great job, you've already met with a lender. Do you know what that payment looks like? And where are you comfortable with your payment? And do you know what that purchase price is? Right? Then I want to know, where is their house? What does that look like? Where do you want to live? Why is that important to you? Tell me about what that means for you and your goals. For every one of those questions that I'm asking when I'm identifying motivation, I really want to know, I really want to go 3 questions deep. So they're going to give you a first answer, which is going to be like a pretty basic answer, right? Like, hey Liz, why are you buying a house?
I'm sick of paying rent.
You're sick of paying rent. Good. Tell me more about that.
Oh my gosh, it just went up $500 this year. It's crazy.
$500. And like, did the landlord do any remodeling or like any improvements to the place?
It's a total shithole.
Great. So then why is it important to you? I mean, I understand it must be frustrating living there and having your rent raised by $500 a month. Why is it important for you to go and buy a house instead of just renting another one?
Because I finally qualify. It took a long time to be able to qualify. It's been sad to watch the market continue to go up.
So you've been planning this for several years.
Yeah.
Great. And congratulations for finally getting here.
Yeah.
Why is it important to you to actually go and buy something now?
For me, I mean, it's really about building generational wealth. I'm afraid that if I don't buy at least a few houses, my kid is never going to be able to buy.
Great. So in the process of buying these few houses, like talk to me about the order of operations. How do you see this playing out?
Well, I mean, obviously affordability is tough right now, and we want to make sure we're living within our means so we can keep saving, because we want to buy, something that we're going to fit in for maybe the next 5 years or so, and then be able to save during that time too. So we've got to keep it pretty affordable, and then in 5 years we can buy another one without having to sell this one.
So, and then from her answer, I have like 5 more questions, right? And so I just want to keep asking the questions until I have a really good idea. Like I've already learned in the 3 questions I asked her that she's not a one-time client and she's not buying a forever home. She's buying an investment that's going to allow her to still save money, and she's going to come back to me not once, not twice, but probably 3 or 4 times to build a wealth portfolio. So the conversation that I'm now having with her is, how do we get you into something that you're comfortable enough living in now, that you know is not your forever home, but also is going to turn into a rental that fits in a rental profile. So I don't want her buying something that it's not going to rent later, right? So there's all of these different things and all of these different questions that I need to ask her, and I need to understand how much she knows so that I know the direction of the conversation to educate her to hit her goals. Does that make sense to everyone? So even though the questions on the page are pretty basic and pretty simple, they're again just cues for you to remember to ask more questions. The surface level answers, like her surface level answer was, well, my rent went up. What's her longer term answer? What's the real motivation? Generational wealth, right? So those are, depending on the answer, that's going to be a different conversation for everybody. So the questionnaire is really just a placeholder for me to remember to ask more questions. So now I know why she wants to buy, where, like, I'm going to identify where, and the where question is the same. Where are you thinking about buying? Great. What's important to you about that area, right? What does that mean for you to live there? Would you be open to, like, if they give you specific parameters, if I found a house like 3 blocks outside of your parameters, would that work? Like the perfect house, would that work? I'm gonna question what they've limited themselves to in their mind so that I can make as big or as narrow of a search as I can. So if somebody, this works both ways. So if they tell me like, I wanna live on 15th and 15th, and I'm like, cool, you have a $400,000 purchase price and you're looking in $1 million neighborhood. Why is that important to you? Right? And then I'm gonna listen, because maybe it is the fact that they really need to be there, and maybe they have some money that they're not telling me about, or maybe they just don't understand the prices in that neighborhood. But before I assume that I know the answer to that question, I wanna ask another question, right? So then I wanna know location. I wanna know why they wanna live in that location. If they tell me something broad, like, I don't know, just anywhere where my price range is. What does anywhere look like? Like, are you gonna live in West Wendover or East Wendover and like commute to Salt Lake every day? Like, draw some boundaries around that for me and tell me why, okay? And then I wanna know, what does the house itself look like? How many bedrooms do you need? Why do you need them? Why is that important to you? How many bathrooms? My favorite bathroom question to ask is, when you say you want 2 bathrooms, are you talking about 2 places to shower, or do you just need two places to go? Because then you know the difference between 2 full bathrooms, a bathroom and a 3/4 bathroom, or a bathroom and a half. Why is that important? I want to know garage. I want to know if the yard is important. I want to know, do they have kids? Do they have pets? Do they have roommates? Do they have any other considerations that we need to take into consideration before we set up the search? Okay? Why is that important? I heard one from Broker Dave the other day, and I was like, no. If they have pets and you show them a condo that doesn't allow pets, how big of a problem is that? Yeah. So that's a really important, I want to know, like, who else are they going to be living with? What other lifestyle accommodations do we need to make in their search? Then I want to know 2 very specific questions. What do they love about where they're living currently? In Liz's case, she told me that she doesn't like that the rent got raised, but maybe the reason why she has stayed there is because it has this phenomenal layout, or it's like in this really cool location that she wants to stay in. Right? But I don't know that. All I know right now is that she hates that her landlord hasn't made any repairs. It's a total dump, and he's charging her $500 more a month. So I want to know, what does she really like about where she is currently? I also want to know, what does she not like about where she is currently? These are the questions that are going to garner things like, I love the natural light that comes into my house. I love that it's a south-facing house and I don't have to shovel my driveway. I love that it has a large yard and I can entertain outside. I love the size of the kitchen. Or conversely, the kitchen is so small I can't function in it. So that way I know just visually, what am I looking at when I'm looking at photos of houses, that I can be like, I don't even want to send this to them. They're not going to like it. Right? These are your visual cues that you're looking for. So the first questions are like basic, narrow it down parameter questions for your MLS search, and the other questions are emotional questions, like what about the space itself is going to speak to you in a way that you're going to say yes. Okay, and then what I want to know is, what do they know about the market? Tell me what you know, tell me what your friends, tell me what the newspaper has told you about buying right now. Okay, there's a good one. Interest rates are high. Compared to what? I want to know their frame of reference, right? Well, compared to 2021, yeah, sure, yes, they're a little bit higher. Historically, over the last 30, 40 years, they're still below average. So then I have a chance to kind of put some objections into perspective before they become a problem when I'm trying to get the agreement signed. Does that make sense? The other one we get is, oh, I've heard there's nothing out there. Like the inventory is really low. That might be the case, and when we go through and actually set up your search, I'm gonna look at two things. I'm gonna look at what's the active inventory that we could look at today, and then I'm gonna flip it over and show you what's sold. And if we have one active thing and you're like, it's okay, but then we flip it over and there are 10 under contract properties that are already being sold, what does that tell me? The market's moving fast and what they're looking for is available, but when we find it, we're gonna have to move quickly. Conversely, if we pull up the search and there's like 50 different homes to choose from, what does that tell me? Maybe, or we might not have to compromise on a lot of stuff. We can be pretty selective about what we want to go see and why.
Plus, you might be looking at a lot of houses.
I want to do as much as I can in this consultation to set the precedent that I'm going to do such a good job listening to you and taking notes and understanding your motivation and why you want to do this right now, that I can show you like maybe 4 homes and you're like, this is it, this is the one. I want to buy this one, right? If you're showing 10, 20, 30, 40 homes, you should probably sit back down and do this again. You're wasting your time, you're wasting their time. It's frustrating. Like there's a missing piece. You haven't asked the right question. You haven't narrowed it down enough to understand why they're doing what they're doing to put it in front of them. Make sense? So this, like, understanding motivation and really getting to know them and why this is important to them is going to set you up as an agent for an easier transaction experience. So now I know what they know about the market, right? I also know that whether or not it's their first time buying or not, right? If it's not their first time buying, I want to know about their last experience, how they felt about it, and why they aren't using their same agent. Why do I want to know that? It's how. Yeah. I already know I'm going to do better, right? I know all of you will do better. I want to know what was their tipping point? What was the one thing that last agent did or didn't do that made them feel like they should look for a different agent the second time? Right? Because then I know, oh, for whatever reason, this client feels like this and this and this needs to happen for it to feel like a positive experience. These are the things I'm absolutely going to deliver no matter what, right? And then I want to talk to them about that experience, right? If they've been through the process, I want to review, like, here are the steps to buying a home. We're going to go look at homes. We're going to put an offer in on a home. You're going to do the earnest money. You're going to go schedule your inspection. We're going to get through that. We're going to do your appraisal. And we're going to schedule your closing, then we're going to move, right? The whole process. I want to ask them if they have any questions so that I can answer those up front. And then I want, if they're like kind of hesitant or don't understand one of those steps, I'm probably going to go in a little bit more depth, right? Just so that they have all of those questions, they have everything lined up as much as they can before we get into it. People have a really easy time adapting to change or getting over roadblocks if they know they're coming. It's when it's a surprise that you run into a problem. Make sense? I want to know their timeline. If I found you the perfect house tomorrow, Liz, would you write an offer on it?
No, because my lease doesn't expire for 6 months.
Oh, talk to me about that. So have you talked to your landlord about a lease buyout or what happens if? And? Okay. Are you in a position where you could buy out the lease? Okay. So when is your lease up?
November.
In November. Is it the 1st of November or the last day in November? Okay. I would love for you if you could find a copy of your lease and we could sit down together and kind of strategize around that. There are oftentimes people sign lease agreements and don't even understand what's in them. Many leases have a buyout clause. And a lot of the time, and Elise is nodding her head, yes, she works in property management. There are many times where the client doesn't even understand that with 30 days notice and just paying until the landlord gets it re-rented, they can walk away from their lease.
Let's say we just did that, we just found out that the landlord said verbally that I couldn't pick up without paying full lease, that we have a clause.
I'd probably show the landlord their own agreement and say, hey, here's the agreement we have in writing. I'm going to start looking for a home. My promise to you is I will give you 30 days notice before I vacate, and then I will fulfill my obligation to pay the rent until you have it leased, and I would love to help you get it leased. Anybody else have any questions there? Lease is probably the biggest pushback, right? Sometimes there's other things like job considerations. Sometimes there's financing considerations like, hey, I'm changing jobs. Hey, I can't start a job until this date. So then I want to lean on the lender, right? What does this look like? When can we really start looking so that they are set up for success with their financing?
What would you say would be a roadblock where you're going to say, hey, we're not going to start looking at homes until?
If they are absolutely not in a position where they could even pay 1 month's rent, that's a big red flag for me. Like, I understand that you have been waiting and saving money, and I never want to set you up for failure. Maybe it is a good idea for you to like focus on saving some more money and let's get closer to the end of your lease, maybe 3 months before your lease ends instead, and then start looking.
So you're gonna ask another question, say you got a home to sell in Wyoming before they're ready to buy.
Yeah, what does that look like, Nick? You have a home in Wyoming. Do you have an agent that you're interviewing to sell your house, or is it already on the market?
Pretty sure I know who I'm gonna use.
Okay, so you know who you're going to use, and what does your timeline look like for that?
June or July.
To list it or to have it sold?
Listed, that's when the lease comes to an end.
Got it. Okay, so you're listing it in June or July. Can you buy without selling it? Okay, so you would want to wait. Got it. So would it be helpful if we went over the finances and really helped you make an educated decision on that before we move forward? Yeah. So like, do you see what I'm saying? Like people say no. People have that like, I'm not ready yet. Usually because they don't have enough information, right? They either can't, they really can't, or they just don't have enough information to make an educated decision. There's like really only two options there. They're already here. They've already taken time out of their day. They're already meeting with you. They're serious enough that they've shown up for the appointment. The only reason why they're telling you no is either because they literally can't and they know they can't, and then I question why they even took the appointment if they know they can't, or they don't have enough information to make an educated decision. You just need to ask the right questions for them to be like, oh yeah, I guess I didn't, I mean, I'm just thinking I guess I don't really know that I can't. I probably should talk to someone that could tell me the answer. Make sense? Then I want to know, when we work together, what would make your experience a 10? I'm just going to stop. I want to hear everything they want to see from me to make their experience a 10. And then when they tell me those things and I know I can deliver on them, I'm going to repeat them back to them and tell them how I'm going to do it. Most often the answers are going to be like, I want to be able to find the house that I love and I want you to be able to get it for me. Great. And if I can deliver on all of that, Nick, is there any reason why you and I can't work together? Right. And when I can put that in front of you, is there any reason why we can't work together? Is there anything else that you would need to see from me? Pretty easy client, right? I show up, I do my job, I get him in the house he wants, he's happy. Great, that's all like +1 experiences if I do anything else. Sometimes I'll have clients that say, you know, my understanding is that you're gonna come and pick me up and we're gonna go see homes and you're gonna drive me there every time. Now I have either an education moment on how I do business, or I have an opportunity to ask another question. What's important to you about me driving you around? Great. So knowing that you don't drive, the location that we're looking in becomes monumentally important, isn't it? Right? So it's all ways to tie back and really be able to set the expectation of how you're going to make sure that their goals are so important to them that they're going to have a 10 plus experience working with you. Now, here's the magic. Once I've got their buy-in and they're like, yeah, a 10 plus experience looks like this, and I don't have any other objections, and thank you so much for answering my questions, I'm going to explain the RAS to them. Ever go out and buy a new car thinking that you're the only one that drives this sweet new car, and you get on the road in your brand new car, and then you see that every single person is driving your same car? That's your reticular activating system. That is the part of your brain that is looking for the thing that you're focusing on. And now that we're about to embark on this journey of buying a house, you're going to hear people talking about real estate everywhere, like literally everywhere. Every restaurant you go to, every event that you go to, like all of a sudden out of the corner of your ear, you're just going to hear people talking about real estate. Can you do me a favor? And every time you hear someone talk about real estate, will you introduce me to that person? My job is to make sure that everyone's receiving the same level of service that I have just promised you. And once we're done, I'm actually unemployed. So would you just do me a favor and help me keep my job? Right? It can be silly, it can be funny. But now they know that like, hey, this is why this is happening to me. This is why like no one ever talked about real estate around me before, and now I hear it everywhere. And my agent wants me to introduce them to more people. Okay? And then at that point, I'm going to ask them, what are next steps? They're going to be like, well, let's go. Show me the homes. Show me the stuff that we just spent a half an hour talking about. And then I'm going to go through, hey, the state of Utah has defined that in order for me to show you homes, we have to have an agency agreement. Let's go through that together. I'm going to answer any and all of your questions. We're going to come to an agreement. We're going to sign the agreement, and then we're going to schedule appointments to go see homes. Is that okay? And then I'm going to run through everything I ran through on Wednesday.
Do you always do this in person, or do you do it on the phone?
Never over the phone. At the very least, I may do it over Zoom. I want them in my office.
So you always schedule an initial buyer appointment?
Always, yeah. Because otherwise what happens? If they call me and they want me to go open a door for them, but I know that there's probably 5 other homes in that neighborhood that fit what they're looking for that I could have shown them, I've wasted their time, right? So this is, especially with what's coming down the pipeline in July where you need a buyer broker agreement just to open a door, this is a really great opportunity for you to be showing your clients all of the value that you provide, that you care about their time, that you care about their money, and you care about their goal of owning real estate. If you're not doing this and not sitting down, you're kind of just like one of those agents that's showing up like, yeah, I can open that door for you. And what happens if enough of us are doing that? One company is going to come in and be like, cool, you all want to open doors? Great, I'm going to give you a salary and we're going to collect all the money. Right? This is why we get paid the money we do, is because we take the time to understand our clients' needs. So then I'm going to get the buyer broker agreement signed, blah, 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 whatever. And then right there in the consultation, I'm going to pull up the MLS and I'm going to pull up everything that fits exactly what they're looking for. And we're going to schedule appointments to go and see them. If nothing comes up, but all the under contracts come up and they're like, okay, so we might have to wait a little bit, I'm going to set our next appointment. Or I am going to call you on this day and we are going to look again and see if there's anything you want to see. I'm never going to leave an appointment without setting my next appointment. Number one, it's so that I can remember to stay in touch with my clients on a regular basis. And number two, it's for their peace of mind and security that they are not just meeting with me and going through an hour-long presentation and identifying everything they need, and then they're never going to hear from me again.
And signing everything.
Right, and they just signed a really important agreement with me that promised that I'm going to represent them. Represent them. Don't leave an appointment without setting the next appointment.
There's a question about whether you should put them in your car or whether they should follow you in their car.
If it's like one person or a couple, and this is a personal preference thing, I would prefer that they ride with me, because what happens after you see a house?
It's 12 hours between houses.
That's what
And
they
if
say.
I'm in a different car and they're in their car and they're like, oh, that house was so stinky and like I didn't love this and I didn't love that, and I'm in my car, do you think I'm going to hear that? They don't want to hurt my feelings, right? Even though I have nothing to do with that listing. Like there's just this general courtesy of like, well, I don't, like she took the time and she showed me the house and like, it was really bad. But like, we're just gonna say thank you. Yeah, thanks, that wasn't the right one. I wanna know why. So if I can, I want them in my car. There are many instances where either the client won't wanna be in your car or they have kids with them and you can't accommodate 5 people in your 4-passenger car, right? In those cases, before we leave to get into our cars to go to the next house, we're gonna have a conversation out in the street by our cars, not in the house. That's important. Why is that important? Everyone is listening. So I'm gonna go out on the street in front of our cars and I'm gonna ask them a couple of things. I'm going to ask them, what do they think about the house? What do they like about the house? What would they change about the house? And is that a house they wanna write an offer on? And then once we get a couple in, I'm gonna use like whatever benchmark they've set for me, whatever they love about one house, I'm gonna ask like, do you like this house better than that house? Make sense? Does anyone else have any questions? Jess?
With the statement that Utah, you said something about Utah requires me to have the viability sign before I can show the home. Is that, what specifically is that? Is that a law? Is that a?
It's currently in the Code of Ethics. We are not, as realtors, supposed to be accessing our super key boxes without a client. When do you have a client? So anyone you show a house to, if they don't have a signed agreement with you, you're technically representing the seller. And in some cases, if you don't even have a client, you're trespassing. That's why we always say, like, schedule an appointment and make sure the agent knows if you're just doing a preview. You're not actually showing the house to a client. That's a good question. Any other questions, Mike?
Just saying one of the things that I noticed as we're watching, look at the homes out, get them to rate which one is number one.
Yep.
And as they see more homes that only change, and one of the reasons, just to be a devil's advocate, I'm told not to bring my car because it's my home. I get into accidents. They're injured. Not happen.
So all of us, as part of our 1099 contractor agreements, carry insurance riders on our cars. And if you don't know that you have that, please go check, because you did sign an agreement with Keller Williams that said you'll put liability insurance on your car. You're covered. You're covered up to $1 million. So yes, it is a liability, and so is driving a car. Anyone ever had a client hit their car?
I almost did.
Nate has. His client hit his car. They bought a house. Anyone else have any questions? Jocelyn?
Do you ever address it? I was out for a but do you ever address like, especially with first home buyers, like what their fear is about buying? Like what kind of fears they have?
Yeah. Tell me more about that.
But do you ask them? Like, is that something you ask?
That's going to be part of the, like, what do you know about the buying process? That'll usually come out then. They'll be like, well, I know nothing, and it's actually kind of scary. Like, tell me more about that. Why is that scary for you? What does that look like? What questions do you have that would make it less scary?
What do you like about the house? What would you change? And would you like to make an offer? What was number 3?
They're not in any specific order, but I want to know what did they like? What did they not like? Or like, what was a deal breaker? What would they change? So now I'm looking for like, they like the house, but they don't like the paint, right? That's usually those answers. But if I can get them to that point and they're like, I love it, but like the paint colors are ugly, then it's just that's the beauty of homeownership. You get to choose whatever colors you want, right? Sometimes there's like this weird disconnect, right? Like some people walk in and they're only focused on furniture and they're like, oh, the decor was gross. And I'm like, hey, good thing they're gonna take it all with them. Right? Like you never know what the objection is unless you ask. Like I've had all sorts of silly ones like, oh, there was, the doorknobs are like super ugly. And I'm like, oh my gosh, great. Like if you bought the house and I gave you new doorknobs as a closing gift, like how cool would that be? Like if that's the only reason why you don't like the house, let's make it a solution and not like a reason why you don't buy this house that you love. So I just want to know. People will. They will. They'll be like, oh, I don't like the carpet. Like, great. What if we could get the seller to replace the carpet? And then it's like, well, it's not just the carpet. Like, it's also this. I have a feeling that even though this house has everything that we've identified are your main features and benefits that you want to see in a house, and you're still pushing back on me, Jocelyn, is there something else? Is there another question we haven't answered? Is there something going on that like, that's so great. Guess what? That's normal. You're human. And then I'm going to go into the conversation about like, hey, buying a house is stressful. You should be nervous. If you weren't nervous, I'd be scared.
What if now it's running off at really the right time?
Tell me more about that.
Oh, my dad was saying that like maybe I should wait.
Wait for what?
For rates to come down and prices to come down.
Oh, that's great. I can totally understand that. And in the meantime, when rates go down, what else happens?
Buyers come out.
Yeah, more competition, higher prices. Like you guys know the answers to all of these questions, right? We talk about all of this ad nauseum. We're just not asking enough questions to get to that answer. What else? That was good. I love that. Because it's never like, oh, I just don't like that. It's usually like a bigger question. Like I love this house and I'm so scared to write an offer. Great. Talk to me more about that. How can we make it less scary?
Always outside? Oh, okay, I'm like.
Yeah, not in Florida.
Like, what is it? The AC.
Just upset about the location of the AC condensers. Tell me more about that. Why is that important to you? Yeah. See? But if instead of like trying to immediately fix it, we just ask one more question. What about that is important to you? Help me understand why that's a problem. Anyone else? Well, that's it, you guys.
I have a question.
Yeah.
So when you're dealing with a first-time home buyer, so also my big aha was, like, I have not been doing that sheet. I've been doing like a very small version of it, so I know that will speed up my consultation a lot. But when say you do have a first-time home buyer and you actually kind of need to go through your presentation, you just go through that whole sheet first. I felt like there was like a point where you can put it in the middle somewhere.
I want to know about them. I want to know why, right? And then I want to know their knowledge, and then I want to know their fears, and then I want to know like how much do they know about the process, all of that. But I want it to be about them and why they're doing this first, always. And I'll go as deep and as long as I need to on that first, because sometimes if we go deep enough in that conversation, we're going to figure out that maybe it's not the right time for them right now. And I don't want to go over the whole market and like spew market knowledge all over them if like really it's like they're not ready, they're not ready, they're not ready.
Conditions, yeah.
So maybe you go through that whole thing and then
Yeah, like the market overview and that kind of stuff, yeah.
You're gonna show them homes in your presentation, right? You would really know what the purchase price is. So
Yeah, there are stopping points here. If we get to, have you been pre-qualified? Have you met with the lender? Do you know what your payment looks like and are you ready to go? And they say no. Great, I'm gonna get you in touch with the lender and then we're gonna get back together and do this. Yeah, if they need to get financing and aren't pre-qualified, that's a stopping point.
Don't you find that out before you meet with them?
Yeah, and sometimes they'll tell you yes, and really it's no. So I want to know, are you pre-qualified? And they're like, yes. And I'm like, what's your lender's name? And then if they're like, I'm like, would you like to sit down with the lender? Yeah.
I find that a lot of buyers are hesitant to meet with
Oh, that's an order of operations conversation. Like, I mean, Kayla, if you fell in love with a $750,000 house and then you found out you only qualified for 700, how sad would you be? That's why we meet with a lender first.
How much do you go into the lending and the process? Weird question.
I don't, that's not my job. Yeah, if they've already met with a lender and they already know what loan product they're getting and what payment they're getting, like, why would I muck that up? Not my job. Who else? Any other questions? Okay, that's it. Thanks, you guys. What? Yes.
I'm doing it next week, it might